Good evening. We'd like to welcome you to the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee meeting on Monday, March 5th, time 7 p.m. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
Here.
Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire is here. Alderman Lopez is not here, and Alderman Gidge is not here. And we also have with us this evening Alderman Dowd.
Thank
We
you.
have a quorum.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, public comment. Do we have anyone from the public that would like to speak at this time? We see none. Thank you. Okay, so now we will do interviews from the Hunt Memorial Board of Trustees, and Chief of Staff Kim Kleiner will be giving some information. Welcome.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Chair. Mayor Donchis sends his regrets. He's actually upstairs with our second annual City Academy, teaching them all about what it's like to be mayor. So that's quite exciting. Mr. DuBois was recommended to our office by the chair, Brenda Barron, and he has stepped forth, attended some of the Hunt committee meetings, and has indicated that he is ready to serve the city, and the mayor thanks him very much for that. Mr. DuBois has taught at various places throughout the school district, Bicentennial, Fairgrounds, and then was a driver's ed instructor for the city. So further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DuBois.
Hello.
Thank you. Good evening. So tell us why you want to be on the Hunt Memorial Building Trustees.
Well, in all honesty, I was asked by my friend Brenda Barron to serve, and I gave it some thought. I went to one of the meetings, and I said, sure, I can do this. But I feel like it's my time now that I've retired from the school district. It's my time to have the time, rather, to give back to the community. So that's why I decided to do it. I'm very active in Nashua.
Very good. Any questions from the committee? Alderman Wilshire.
Thank you for your willingness to serve. That's a landmark in our city. It's a gem, a jewel.
It
and,
is.
Appreciate your willingness to step up and do that. In fact, when I was a kid, I'm a Nashua native. When I was a kid, that was the library for us, and I spent a lot of time in the children's room down in the basement of that building. So, thank you for your willingness. I don't really have any questions. Just wanted to say thank you for.
You are very welcome. It's interesting because in 1977, I was interviewed by Emma Nickel, and you probably all know. No, you wouldn't know Emma Nickel. and Charlie Katsois, but that's where I was hired because that was the school department back
Right.
then, before the Massey building was open. So it has a personal place in my heart. My first teaching job.
Anyone else? I agree, thank you. It's great to see that we have a lot of citizens in the city that want to participate and be part of boards and commissions, and that's great in that you have a history. I, too, have a history there. I actually worked one summer in the children's library stamping books, so that shows you how old we are.
Yeah.
But we thank you, and we'll bring up your nomination later on in the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank
Okay.
you. That was easy.
And now we have from the planning board, Ms. Sean McGinnis.
Hi.
Hi.
Shall I come up?
You're up.
Okay, great, thank you. Hi there. Thanks, Kim. Well, hello, everyone.
Hi there.
Hello.
So I don't think we need any introduction here.
Maybe not.
Probably not.
But a little bit.
Former Alderman Sean McGinnis from Ward 1. Mayor Donchis actually reached out to Mr. McGinnis and asked him if he would be willing to come back and to serve on the planning board. He really was very respected of Sean's bringing forth so many ideas. He would come and speak with the mayor about things that were happening when he was a liaison to the board. So that's something that the mayor respected, and he reached out and he asked Mr. McGinnis to come forth and serve.
Great, thank you. Mr. McGinnis, would you like to add anything to?
Well, I want to thank the mayor. It's very nice of him. I did enjoy serving on the planning board. And, I'm excited to do it as an alternate.
Okay,
I do have 35 years in real estate and some experience on the board. So, I'm very pleased, and I want to thank Jim for nominating me.
thank you. Any questions from committee members? Alderman Wilshire.
Just a comment, just want to thank you, Sean. I know you spent a number of years on this board, and
Oh, yeah.
thank you for your willingness to step up and be on the planning board.
Oh, thank you, Alderman Wilshire. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I too would like to thank you. I know that I used to watch some of those meetings, and you were so calm and collected during some of those long nights.
Some of them go quite late, don't they?
Yes, they did. So I was surprised that you'd want to come back, but we thank you for
Oh, it's all-
stepping up to the plate again.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
your nomination will be brought up at the end of the meeting as well.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Very
Thank you
good.
both.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay. Okay, communications.
We have a communication from Larry Boudreau, Human Resource Director, regarding a revision to the Personnel Chapter and Merit Plan.
Okay.
I would move to accept the communication and place it on file.
Okay, any objections? Okay. Application to license hawkers, peddlers, vendors license.
We have none.
Appointments by the mayor.
We have the appointment of William Du Bois to the Hunt Memorial Building Board of Trustees for a term to expire January 31st, 2023.
Okay, motion by Alderman Wilshire to appoint Mr. William J. Dubois Jr. to the Hunt Memorial Board of Trustees, term to expire January 31st, 2023. We have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Okay, next.
Planning Board, we have the appointment of Sean McGinnis. I would move that we confirm move to. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm having a mental block tonight. To confirm Sean McGinnis to the Planning Board for a term to expire March 31st, 2019, and recommend that the full board pass that.
Thank you. Motion by Alderman Wilshire to appoint Sean McGinnis as an alternate to the Planning Board, term to expire March 31st, 2019. All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Okay. Unfinished business.
We have none?
New business resolutions.
We have none.
New business ordinance.
We have ordinance 18008, revisions to the personnel chapter of the ordinances and the merit plan.
Okay, so I would like to invite our HR Director, Larry Boudreau, and members of the Personnel Board to come forward, please, and take a seat. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. Mr. Boudreau, if you would like, would you please introduce yourself and the members of the Personnel Advisory Board?
Certainly.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much. So my name is Larry Budrow. I'm the Human Resources Director for the city. And I've worked with the Personnel Advisory Board. Our third member couldn't make it today. I'll introduce her first. Michelle O'Malley is the Executive Director of the New Hampshire March of Dimes. To my farthest right is Carol Baldwin. She's the Executive Director of the Nashua Adult Learning Center. And to my immediate right, Sheila Cabot, the Director for Career Management Associates, a human resources consulting firm.
Okay. And who is the chairperson of that board?
Sheila Cabot has served in that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so before us, we have the information concerning the merit panel revisions to the personnel and merit plan. So, Mr. Boudreau, if you would, I would turn the floor over to you to start the conversation, and whenever you want to turn it over to Sheila, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
With your permission, Alderman Karen, I'm going to ask Sheila Cabot to begin the presentation.
Absolutely fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A little bit of the history of Carol and Michelle and I working together started just about 2 years ago, and we were asked to look at the merit plan, and we convened in the spring of 2016, and we looked at the merit rules and regulations, and we prepared a report, and it was submitted and presented on June 6th, 2016. And based on those observations and responding to some of the concerned voices of the aldermen at the time, namely Dean, Clemens, and Lopez, we determined that we needed to perform a salary survey. So we were asked to do that, and we did it forthwith and finished it and have just gone back to review all the elements. We decided that we needed to review the ordinance that existed at that time. And as a result of a very we met every couple of weeks from 7:30 in the morning till 9:30 or 10, which was best for our schedules working, and determined that we had 2 documents and they were redundant and necessarily not supporting what the municipal employees needed. We, at that point, decided that we needed a salary survey, and we asked the Human Resource Director to provide that opportunity, and he researched and found one that worked to our expectations. And we devised a plan, which you have in your hands, the material was sent to you, that we feel we could approach with good data and conscientious application of compensation rules and regulations and practices in 2018. And we feel that what you have in your documents and the material is the very best of that compensation work. We believe that there are some adjustments that need to be made. The fact of the matter is, for one reason or another, we as a city have not paid attention since a number of years, and those adjustments that were made before were rather incremental but didn't solve the problem. So we hope that our presentation this evening with you will help us make that decision with you, that we need to have something that's up to date, that's welcoming to employees who approach the city for employment, and that supports the current employees that are here with respect. One of the things that I asked recently for the HR director to do for me, because having been an HR director and now working with many HR directors in small and medium-sized companies, we look at turnover. And so he provided me with information just recently, preparing for tonight. And from 7/1/15 up to the present, we have lost 52 employees. And that's a large number as I look at it through my viewing lens. When we look at the reasons going for a better job, in real time, not percentages, 26 of them left for that reason. 7 left because they were overall dissatisfied, including going for a better job. So the others were more incidental and more appropriate to the operational business. So we lost 33 people of that 52. I believe that this approach, with your consideration, will enable us to considerably decrease that number. One of the things that the HR director said that he was sending out a package to you, which arrived the end of last week. And I don't know whether you've had a full opportunity to look it over, but I'd be glad to walk through it with you. And at times when the detail is more appropriately to Larry's expertise, I will turn to him and ask him to respond. So would you like me to do that?
How do you feel? Yes?
I think so, yeah.
Yes. That'd be
Yes?
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So on March 1st, 2018, you received a packet which indicated that there were 4 major areas: the introduction to the proposed legislation, the merit employee rules and regulations that were effective, the current plan, 2011, the salary survey results and where we as a city placed in those salary survey results, and then salary and wage classifications. So in the history, which I'll just pull out some ideas, on that first page, we're proposing a revision to the personnel chapter and merit plan today, the 5th of March. Because we revised the ordinance and redlined most of it, we decided that we needed an overall document, not 2 documents, to manage this particular part of the merit program. In the context of reading that through, we provided another terminology and called it the unaffected employees. So those are the employees who are not governed by a union contract. And we have many unions, and those do impinge on our salary survey because it's another data point. And those are in a plan that renews every year, which we don't have a mechanism to do that. The result of our work is this proposed legislation. So going through the discussion points, the Chapter 50 describes specific personnel administrative practices, and as I said, confuses with 2 documents. So we recommend that we, from thenceforward, call our merit employees our unaffiliated employees. Thing I have pointed out here is the proposed changes cause no erosion to the board's authority to oversee personnel and practices for the non-union employees. Going to the next section of unaffiliated employees, this document is brand new, right from the scratch. Because the changes are extensive of necessity, we decided that the redlining of the document would not be appropriate. So we're going to talk about the policy. In your words, it's a leap forward. My words, it's a significant and necessary move forward. And the plan the original plan lacked a table of contents, random information, and this particular policy, we took great pride in, well organized, so you could find the information you needed, and the table of contents directs you immediately to it, and it becomes a very fine document for the current employee base. They are all identified there, any of the changes that we made. If you want to eyeball those and any that you might have a question about, we can entertain a question.
Great. Any questions at this point? No? Okay.
Okay.
Would you like to continue? Thank you.
Okay, going into the compensation discussion, our motivation was that the salary schedule that we have, is very obsolete. The merit employees were recognized to be underpaid relative to the market, and this was largely the impetus for us to propose the amendments as we have in 2016. The policy addresses the basic elements of compensation. Are the unaffiliated employees compensated in a manner to attract and to retain? We do not believe it is. Do the policies ensure that compensation practices are both internally equitable, externally competitive, and legally defensible? We do not believe they are at the present time. Third question, are the city compensations cost a reasonable expenditure of the taxpayers' funds? We believe that we have proposed a way over the next several years, starting with January of this year, to get us back on track. But I'm a frugal girl, and I look at things through that lens in business and in my own personal life. And I think we all agreed to that we had to take the taxpayers' money very much in mind. So we've proposed something that will be incremental and yet aim in the direction that we need to arrive. And then 3 or 4 years from now, we will be where we need to be, and we'll do cost of living. So we established salary grades very much with Larry's assistance that we gathered from New Hampshire and Massachusetts. We chose those cities where the direct correlation between the community size and the salary. We also looked at the more complex operations and the greater responsibility of the positions in the organization. Because none of us directly know or work with these employees, with the exception of the HR director, we were really being valued as being objective and not having personal contact and knowing even who the people were in the particular positions. If you want to look just for a moment at that part of your package where you have the salary and wage scale, you will see that we're going to propose a much shorter step range. Because when we looked at it initially back in the spring of 2016, our first glance, most of the employees, if not all the employees, were already way past those initial steps. So it was really obsolete upon arrival. And what we hope we're proposing will really enhance the ability to keep those steps current as we hire people that are less experienced down at the lower end, and we reward the people who are in key positions at the present time and have what I call seasoning. The grades that we establish, we feel will put the city in a competitive position, as well as being aware of the fiscal constraints. This part, the next paragraph, I think is very important. The top of each salary range represents the current market value for that job, for that position, based on the labor market. We are right on the border of Massachusetts, so we draw from Massachusetts, as you know, as well as the southern tier of the state. So we had to look at both of those areas. And again, we want to retain our key people, many of whom have been garnering their skill set and their competencies for many years, and also add to that base when we need to replace someone for retirement or what other reason. The PAB, the Personnel Advisory Board, considered the ineffectiveness of today's market in that 17 step that I just mentioned to you. So this policy modernizes the premise upon which people are paid. As I mentioned, it has 8 steps as indicated. Today's environment, increase public sector jobs mobility, compel Nashua, our city, to pay at market value in order to retain that good talent. What about costs? When considering a group of employees, the total cost increase from one year to the next results from 4 subgroups. The employees at the top, and this is an old term, but I will use it because that's what I was taught. You red circle them. They've gone as far as they can go. They know that, but they still catch up by cost of living. The second set is the top step receives a cost of living increase right along, or 0.9% in 19, and then they get to the top. Employees in steps 1 through 7 are proposed to receive a step increase, which in fiscal year 19 will be 4.9%. But in raw data, what we're saying is we're moving them up to a point where they belong, and we'll make those adjustments accordingly. And then they will get the cost of living. Employees who resign or retire may be replaced by lesser paid employees. So that's going to offset some of those costs that we're estimating at this point. We developed and are proposing to you a multi-year transition plan to make salary adjustments that are necessary to move the employees from an absolutely obsolete structure to a market-driven schedule. This transition plan is embedded in the legislation. It's the philosophy of the policy for retention and also for the opportunity to hire talent. It will be retroactive. We had proposed going back to July, but we were encouraged to move forward and start it in January 1st. So we propose that we implement it being January 1st, retroactive, and that estimated cost by the CFO, correct? Yes. Is just approximately $50,000. So this is before the Budget Committee at the present time to get the appropriate money that we need for that. And John also gave us the data in the next paragraph that assuming 0 turnover, annual pay increases forecasted at this point for 4.6, 3.9, and decreasing each year till we get to where we need to be will be 3 or 4 years. And it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen in the next couple of years that will offset these costs. Turnover is inevitable, so we know that this is a worst-case scenario and seen through a very objective financial lens. So in closing, as your document indicates, we believe that we have thoroughly looked at this from every side possible as a committee, and we are hopefully assisting you in correcting a problem that has existed for a number of years. And respecting the constraints of our budgeting process, we have been frugal about our request to how to implement it and get to where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have some questions? Okay, Alderman
I have a
Wilshire.
question, and probably for Mr. Boudreau. How many employees does this cover?
125.
125. How many of those 125 are already at the top of their pay grade?
31 right now, 31 at the top of this current pay grade.
So how does this change affect those 31 people?
There's not a universal answer.
Okay. We'll take them one by one. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
So the reason there's not a universal answer is Sheila Cabot mentioned that there are a small handful of people in this group that we recommend to be red circled. So how this affects them is that they won't get an increase until the grade to which we recommend they be assigned catches up with their salary. And in some cases, that may happen next year or a couple of years out. So that's one small group of people. And then there are a number of people who will fall somewhere now in the middle of the grade, which they were, before they were at the top, and they will get step increases for the next couple of years until they arrive at the top step. And then once you're at top step, written into the plan is the anticipation of increasing the salary grid each year. So every July 1st, with no action taken, the salary grid will be republished using the same indicator that had been used since 2011 to grant increases to those people who are above the top, which, just as a reminder, is a 3-year look back at the CPI urban Northeast region.
Okay.
Also, may I continue for just a
Sure,
moment?
yeah.
The other thing that's written into the plan is that each December 31st, the Human Resources Director, which I hope is me for a while, is obliged to address the mayor and have looked at the labor market to see if anything's happening out there that would suggest that the mayor may want to come to the Board of Aldermen and say, even though we've been doing this, keeping up with the CPI, for one reason or another, the labor market has eclipsed that. And we recommend doing something else. And that does happen sometimes. And in fact, the current situation with unemployment, as low as it is, I'm not saying that it's happening now, but that's how things can come together. That even though, and so inflation, this trailing average is 0.9% in July. But the unemployment in New Hampshire was 2.3% in December. I think it's 2.8% in January. That's essentially totally full employment.
Right.
And that can impact the labor market just because of the competitiveness, especially sometimes for certain skills.
Could you talk a little bit again about the redlining,
Yes,
please?
certainly.
Thank you.
So they're, and I don't know them in my head, so tonight I cannot identify those jobs for you. But there are 3 positions in this group that we have looked at the market value of the job, and generally because they are long service employees, that even though they've been over the grid, they have in fact been over the grid for years. And so they've inched up to a point beyond which we say, in prudence, we should not pay that job as much as we're paying those few people. We should pay it X. And so the plan is, and this is not uncommon, as Sheila has mentioned, and I learned the same term in my career, was called red circling. There comes a time sometimes where you just say, you need to stop. That's as much as we can look you in the face as an alderman and say, we should pay that job no more than this.
Okay. Thank
I
you
would,
for that.
I am, one other thing if I may. There was a period when this plan was supplied to managers and directors as prescribed by a piece of the ordinance. They reviewed it as they wished. But I have a pretty good street knowledge that those people affected know it. And I've talked to at least one of them individually. And everybody would like to get a raise, but they would appear to be accepting.
Yeah, I mean, some jobs are just, you can only pay so much for that position. I mean, that's what it is. I get that.
That's the point of this committee.
Just to reinforce, compensation is for the objective evaluation of the position, not the person in the position.
Agreed.
We have other mechanisms for that in terms of performance assessments and so forth. So when you go to market, what is the market paying for this particular position? I remember when IT just took off. We know how critical it is today, but that was all new behavior. You couldn't find IT people. They could almost name their own pay because they were so critical to that fast expansion of the technology. Today, it's much more normal, but there are things in the marketplace that change. And I know when I was responsible for compensation, I did key job salary checks every year for the same reason. There are certain jobs that needed to be checked. And that's something that we haven't been doing. And so here we sit after, how many years has it been? 10 years, trying to objectively say, where are we? Where do we want to be? And how are we going to get there in a step-by-step process that allows us to do so based on the resources we have?
Alderwoman Kelly.
First, I just wanted to say thank you. It was very apparent that you took your time. You were very careful in how to even just summarize this. As a new alderman, I really appreciated that. I do have a couple questions about the attrition. So I wanted to know first if we know if the attrition has been historically going up. I know you showed us a couple of years.
The city installed or implemented the Lawson financial software system effective January 1st, 2013. And so information before that is very difficult to get. It does not reside anywhere in an automated place. So the only knowledge I can tell you is that we've been able to calculate turnover in this group beginning in 2013, and it has, and I use the term crept up. It was 13% in 2013, and it was 18% in 2017. But what it was in 2012 and before, I have no idea. However, I can speculate with some reasonable confidence that it probably was less, that creep has probably continued to go up because when I was younger, people came to municipalities and stayed. And that was very often the case. The New Hampshire retirement system, or in a part of this city, the Board of Public Works retirement system, those systems were designed to retain people in public employers, and there were many people that stayed a long time. That is less the case everywhere, right? It's across the country, and correspondingly, it's less the case here. The current average number of years of service of this 125 people is 8 years. And coincidentally, or maybe not, maybe it's just math, the average of the people who left, of the 52 people who terminated, was 8 years.
So if I could ask a follow-on, I wanted to know if we know where they're going after they leave. Are they going to other city governments? Or are they going to the private sector?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Clear.
I didn't mean to be flip, but the answer is yes. They are doing both. They are going to, it depends where they've come from. So, for example, some jobs are uniquely municipal. And so a number of the people who have left from the public works area have gone to work for other cities and towns. The people in the public health area, not necessarily. Some of them are going to nonprofit organizations that with whom they may have worked in a partnership arrangement while they were here. Some of the public health people are nurses, and they may go to a clinical nursing situation or a school nurse. And some just off to, they got a better paying private sector job they had the skills that they could get.
Thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Dowd, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm here tonight because I'm chair of the budget, so I have a couple of questions. First of all, does this also include the non-affiliated from the school department?
No.
No,
So they're on a separate scale,
right.
okay. I don't know whether they've adjusted theirs. But, okay, the other question I have is, are all the divisions, are they factoring, well, first of all, I want to go back one step. If it gets approved here tonight,
Yes.
it's going to go to the full board
Next week,
next week,
probably next week.
probably. Okay, and if approved, my question is, are all the division directors already factoring these rates into their budget?
Yes.
Well, that's good to know.
In a line that, when you see when the budget book is printed, and I've seen the preview, the amounts have been calculated by employee, and then in each department in the salary, on that page with the salaries, it's shown as an individual departmental contingency.
So this grid has been a problem as long as I've been on the board, and doesn't never seem that we get any resolution that could fix it, but this sounds like a pretty good one. And when you have specific jobs at the top, I know you said some were red circle, and I don't know if we have to look at those individually as a board when we're approving this, but there are some jobs in the city that if we have somebody that's been here 20 years, those jobs are maybe very critical to the city. So I assume that they are somehow compensated accordingly, because we'd be in trouble if we lost those people. And then the sort of the other thing is, you had said that, you know, people would be hired in at a lower rate. Some jobs, we probably wouldn't do that
That's right.
because the job is so important that we have to have somebody with some kind of knowledge and background and experience. So,
You might you might, if I can step in here, Larry and I have talked about this often with the committee, that if your CFO left,
mhm,
you're not going to go out and hire a junior person. You're going to try to match the need of the city with the right kind of talent and experience.
mhm.
So you may be hiring at the top or close to the top.
Right.
So it's not, it's just going to continue to be a key job.
Exactly.
And you'll suffer if you hire somebody that's less experienced without the expertise that you need in a critical job.
Right, okay. The other thing, you'd mentioned that 52 people had left and 25 to seek a new job. Some go to other cities, some go to private sector. When these people leave, I am going to make the assumption salary in a lot of cases isn't the only thing. Benefits may also be factored in. Have you looked at that at all? Relative to, this is the salary piece. But if you're apples and oranges with, say, Manchester, if they had much better benefits, that might be a reason for leaving as well. I'm not saying Manchester does, by the way. In fact, I think it might be the opposite, but certainly in the private sector, the benefits may be more enticing to somebody leaving. Of course, a lot of the positions that we have, the non-affiliated positions in the city government, probably don't have close ties to the private sector, but some do. So, just wonder if you'd ever looked at benefits as part of that equation.
Can I take this? Almost every community in New Hampshire, to my knowledge, relative to health insurance and the extent of coverage and the employee cost, fares very well in comparison with private sector positions. And most of the municipalities are pretty similar. The 20% employee contribution for a good plan is pretty common. There is more variation in paid time off, and that becomes that's important to the 21st century workforce. There's quite a bit of variation in the city too. A couple of the unions have earned time and a fairly extensive time off. So, to my knowledge, we compare well when it comes to health insurance. One of the things we didn't dwell on today, but we anticipate, if this legislation is passed, getting a real long-term disability plan. The plan we have now isn't a long-term disability plan at all. It has total lifetime benefit of 1 year. So that was a shortcoming. But when it comes to health, dental, and life insurance, I think we fare well. Paid time off, I think we are still a little beyond the 8 ball.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Okay. So, Mr. Boudreau, would you also explain when we're talking about the 4.9%, how that is broken up so that it's not, people understand it's not a one-time piece, that this is being broken up and how that it's going to affect this year's budget and next year's budget? Thank you.
Certainly. Alderman Dodd, during one of his questions, he mentioned that some positions, some people, and then Ms. Cabot reinforced this. Some people are going to be hired sometimes right at the top, and that's the premise of this system that the Personnel Advisory Board has proposed. If you were to look in the right-hand column of this, what the board is saying, and I'm reinforcing, is that the top step, that's appropriate price for somebody who's performing that job today. And so in some cases, we will hire people right there, and so they may not, if that's the case, they will not get a step increase because they'll already be at the top. However, sometimes you'll find candidates for whom they have the competence, but they have a little less experience, and they will come in at the lower part or the middle part, and they will get step increases. The steps are 4% apart. Everyone is, so if you look on this salary schedule for 2018, and it were to,
Is it page 15? Yeah.
page 15, they're 4% increments. So it goes up, you start at the bottom, we'll go up 4, go up 4, go up 4, except by the time you go up, it's going to be the next fiscal year. And so another one is he's going to be produced that's effective on July 1st, 2018. And it's going to be increased by that 3-year trailing average of the CPI, which is 0.9% this year. So I can't do the math in my head, but if, well, I can probably do it for grade 18, where the top is $100,000, right? So the top of that grade is going to be $100,900. And so if someone was in step 7 and they were earning $96,150 on July 1st, they're going to go to step 8, which by the time they get there is going to be $100,900. And so that's, the 4% is going to be constant, and the 0.9% is going to react to that inflationary measure. Did I get to your question?
That's part of it. But
Okay.
here's the thing. If we approve this, we are going to go back to January of 2018
Yes.
to put everybody at a particular step. That's the 4%, right?
No.
No, okay.
If-
That's what I'm trying to,
Okay, thank you.
and then so that we know what we're anticipating when the budget books come out.
Very good.
Thank you.
So if you don't necessarily need to look, but in the legislation that was submitted to the Board of Aldermen, that package had 2 components. One piece was the ordinance in
Right.
which we are recommending removing most of the language in the ordinance. And at the very last page, and those pages aren't numbered, but immediately before the new policy starts, is a page that is labeled ordinance on the upper top left.
Yep. The last page?
The last page of the ordinance itself, immediately before the new policy starts.
Okay.
And this was a great deal of work that the advisory board helped me with, because after we got to believing that the top step was the market value and most people should be there, we took a quick look and that was about $1 million. And we knew that we had budgeted in contingency $50,000 this year, because we anticipated that, like the previous year, the Board of Aldermen and or the mayor together might have wanted to do something about those people who were above the grid.
Right.
So we believed that it would be reasonable if we came to the board with a new plan that we would probably be allowed to access that $50,000. And I think Alderman Dowd mentioned there is a resolution before the Budget Committee now, I believe, to access that money. So this is complicated, and I'm happy to take you through it. So everybody right now has a pay rate.
Right.
And we would like people to be on a step, but you can't get them to a step immediately because, for one thing, if you do, some of them, it might take 6% to land on the next step, and other people, it might take only 2% to get to a step. And so no one would think that would be fair. And so what we intend to do is for people who are somewhere in the midst of the grade, on July 1st, we're going to give them a 4.9% increase, because that's what they would get if they were on a step. And so for most of the people who are in this system, they're actually not going to be on a step until they get to the top step, which for a whole bunch is going to be in within a couple of years.
Okay.
And I'll just stop right there for a moment and tell you that in fiscal 19, in July, 25 people, or 20% of this group, will be at top step on July 1st. By fiscal year 22, 84 people will be at top step. So it goes 25, 48, 71, 84. People will get to the top and land on a step. We'll hire people from now on. When you get a job in the city of Nashua as a unaffiliated employee, you will get hired on a step. But it'll take a few years before everyone gets there.
Okay.
So what you can expect in the budget is we've laid it all out, or John Griffin has done the heavy lifting on this. He laid it all out on a spreadsheet, and so we know what each employee is slated to get. And if they fall within the range, they'll get 4.9%. If they're close to the top, they'll go to the top step.
Okay. That's Alderman Dowd.
The determination of where somebody falls on the grid coming in from outside, how is that determined? And the reason I ask that is that on the Board of Education, we fought the step problems for years. This year, the contract that's now before the board eliminates that term steps and uses years of experience. Is that something that would be applicable here, or are we using different criteria to place somebody on the grid?
It's my view, and anybody disagrees, I'd welcome them to talk. The jobs here are different than teachers. So teachers across the state, I believe, are kind of recognized as growing in value with years of service. Here we have, and they have 1,000 of them. Here, many of the jobs that we have are relatively unique, one of this. And so I think it's mostly going to be, and should be, more of a market-based approach. So you have a job that's open, you advertise for people who have qualifications, and you hire somebody who's going to do a great job for the city. And if the person that you land upon has had the success, the experience, that they are already near the top of what we're willing to pay, we're going to pay them that. If, or whatever their lot in life has been, that brings them to a point where we think they're qualified for that job, but a offer lower in the grade will be attractive to them, that's how we would make that choice. And in my opinion, it remains important that we have that flexibility, because there's two ways that we balance the 4.9% can initially sound like a lightning rod in this organization, but it's not really, because within 3 years, 84 of these people are going to be at the top of this range, and they're going to be getting just an inflationary-based increase. And when we bring in new people, some of them will get hired at the top, and some won't. If I could go, can I go a second further?
Yes, sure.
What's going to make this a little bit complicated, though, I think, is that the budgeting is going to have to look sometimes at the city as a whole, because, in my department, I had one person who left last year, and I replaced that through a promotion and another hire, and that allowed me to be able to budget and meet the mayor's budget guidelines. Otherwise, I would not have been able to, because I have 11 people, and we're all new, we're all on steps, and even in the current system, that's all that's in my budget really is people and some paper. So what will happen, I think, in the future, which will require some work on the finance department's end, is they're going to have to say to human resources, for example, all right, Larry, you can't just keep the same numbers you have. You brought someone in at less. You've got to give that up so it can get shifted over to the area that needs it.
So I wasn't advocating that we change. I just anticipated that question coming up and wanted to know how to address it. So that makes a lot of sense based on somebody filing for a job and telling us what their experiences is and having determination and where they fall on the grid.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one other question. And it may not apply to a lot of jobs, but in the city, but I think maybe a few. If somebody goes out and acquires additional training or education, do they have an opportunity to go more than one step?
Yes.
Another question. Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's noted here because I wanted to make sure there weren't any surprises, but this new version offers the human resources director and the division director, or in the case of someone who is at director level, the human resources and the director and the mayor, to provide additional step increases to people, but maintains, for the Board of Aldermen's comfort, the requirement that's been there for years, that if anything out of the ordinary is done, then there will be a quarterly memo to the Board of Aldermen that will tell them. So the authority to make the action will happen at the operating level, but the Board of Aldermen will know about it, giving them the opportunity, if they wish, to say, oh, maybe we need to change that.
I say that because sometimes things are in the documents we're referring to, but the people watching on TV, particularly employees, don't know the answer to that question. And if we get it on the record,
Right. Well, I
now
think-
it's there.
I'm sure that it's true here, although it wasn't in our purview to discuss, that you encourage your employees who are less experienced and less educated to develop. It's part of the dialogue between a manager and their employee, that you want people to develop and get better. And so that's going to be acknowledged in terms of looking at that individual and what else they're bringing that they didn't bring before, if they've just gone and taken some courses pertinent to their work, which is usually what the policy indicates, and or gets another degree or whatever. They've enhanced the contribution potential that they have here at the city. So it requires taking another look at it.
And their benefit to the city.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Alderman Kelly.
So my question arises from those at the top that we're going to red circle. I know that Alderman Dowd brought up this idea of they're probably the most experienced and the people with a lot of institutional knowledge. So I want to know, in your experience, how many of those red circles end up leaving?
How many of the red circles are what?
End up leaving because you're essentially saying that this is the top, right? This is as far as you can go.
You want to talk about that?
First, and again, I don't have these people immediately in my head, but the grids are going to be going up every year. And so unless they're way over, it's going to catch up. Also, the reason that some of these folks are in that situation is they've been here for a long time, and that makes them very valuable. And you don't arrive at a choice like this without consternation, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you're being able to sit here and saying, we're recommending a system that pays market values. Sometimes if it's over market value, it's the flip side of saying that some jobs are underpaid, some are also overpaid. So I think that they're going to catch up. And some of the people are going to retire soon, no matter what we do. And in my experience, and I've had limited, and you've probably had limited. I don't know that there's a direct correlation. Usually, folks, well, I don't know there's a direct correlation, other than probably the people who've been here for a long time. They're making good money. I don't think there's a risk, really.
Thank you.
Alderman Dowd.
Just real quick, if they're over the market value, which is probably why they're red circle, they wouldn't have many places to go to leave, because nobody's going to
Match it,
bring them
yeah.
in over
It's a
market
valid point.
value.
Good point. And maybe it's the terminology that I introduced here. But that's how I was taught compensation, is that you red circle. So you can call it whatever you want. My experience, having been an HR person in a number of organizations and now providing counsel for HR people, et cetera, and the work that I do and have done, if you have a good compensation system, in most cases, not so here, it's evaluated every year. It's not static. But we haven't been doing that here at the city. And so whether people understand that or not, they just know that it doesn't feel comfortable because they don't have the knowledge. And people who have significant jobs and know, in my experience, that they are already meeting everything necessary and they are at market value, understand it. And it doesn't provide dissatisfaction. It provides stability and gratefulness that they are working for a place where they love to come to work. They enjoy coming to work. They enjoy doing the kind of work they're doing. And they get up every morning ready to do that. So I think this begins to put us on that path where we educate people. And Larry may have some conversations with people. And I'm sure his door will be open to that, to help them understand, because you haven't had a objective compensation system. And this is putting it in. So you don't want to change your compensation structure. You want to let it support your employees as they go through. So does that make any sense? Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I agree, because this is a long time coming. 10 years is an awful long time. And when I spoke to Mr. Boudreau this morning and saw the steps were like, the 8 steps rather than 10 or 17, that was a question that I had. And knowing about the system, because I was part of it for 40 years, it doesn't give an employee much hope of getting anything or their value, because no one's ever really looking at it. So I think this is important, and I think changing the policy and putting it together and making it more definitive, uh, so that you can understand it, not only for us who have to make that decision, but also to the employees, I think is valuable.
Yes.
And let's face it, today people don't stay in jobs forever.
Good
5,
point.
10 years. I mean, I never thought I would be at my job for 40 some odd years. So, but it changes. And so we have to value them because they do have unique positions. You
Yes.
can't go out into the public sector and be a treatment plant operator or something like that. So I think this is important. And the more information we get there, I think that will help. I think that will help the employees who have questions and concerns. Yeah, is this things in there that might need tweaking? But that's okay. I think the first part of this is that grid and taking care of those grades and steps. For me, I think that's the most important thing that we can do for our employees. So I appreciate it. Do we have any other questions? No, I appreciate you all coming tonight and filling us in and making us understand the hard work that you did over the last year and a half or so. Thank you. Do you have anything else you'd like to say, Mr. Boudreau or Shell? Anything? No?
We appreciate your consideration and the hospitality here
Well,
tonight.
thank you very much and enjoy your evening. Alderman Wilson.
I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage of ordinance 18008.
Okay, motion on the floor is for final passage of ordinance 0-18-008. Do we have any conversation? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, motion passed. Thank you very much.
See
Okay,
you later.
any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Dodd, for being here
You're welcome.
and asking those.
No one in the
Frugal
public? No
questions?
public comment? Remarks by the alderman? Anything? No? No non-public? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Alderman Wilshire? And we are adjourned at 8:04. Thank you all. 8:04 PM.
Thank you.
8:08?
8:08.
Oh, 8:08. 8:08. Thank you,
We went back in
Alderman
time.
Dowd.
Middle.